Hello, everybody. Welcome to this wonderful event that is a collaboration between the National Parents Union and Navigator. This event is called We Got You, because parents and pod leaders, we have you. We know that parents are stressed. We know that parents and pod leaders are doing everything they can to meet their kids' educational needs. And we are here to support you. The National Parents Union was created in January of 2021, so just this year. And our focus has been to bring parents together to support the needs of all of our children. And that includes families that may be low income, definitely parents of color, single parents, single mothers, single fathers, grandmothers, people who are in recovery, people who are post-incarceration, people, parents who may be LGBTQIA. We are supporting and elevating the voices of all of parents for the betterment of our future. And I really quickly want to introduce Christina Lassiter, who's going to share a really beautiful opportunity that we have. So really quick, membership in the National Parents Union is free. And we provide all of these amazing services thanks to sorry about that. Thanks to the vision and the drive of our co-founder and founding president, Carrie Rodriguez. So we have a beautiful opportunities for families and kids. Christina, could you talk about what we have coming up this winter?
Yes, definitely. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad that you're watching this right now. It's going to be definitely a vital discussion. My name is Christina Lassiter. I'm the Director of Policy and Legislation here with the National Parents Union, and excited to offer the opportunity for families to attend our Winter Advocacy Family Boot Camp, Developing Change Makers. And so that's going to be 3 weeks, 1 session a week, starting with December 21st. The next session will be December 28th, and then the last session will be January 4th. So definitely sign up to that. For that, we're going to be offering that to the entire family, parents, children, caretakers. Come on down and join. The registration is in. I think they're offering it in the comment field. Come on down. On the first week, we'll be talking about the U.S. government separation of powers and why that is important. The second week, we will be learning the art of persuasive speech and why that is important. And the third week, we will be putting everything we learned into action. And so I hope that you all will join us for the Winter Advocacy Family Boot Camp. Thank you so much, Marisol, for letting me make that announcement.
I'm really proud about the work that you're doing, and I'm proud of the fact that this summer boot camp the winter boot camp is focused on families working together as advocates. So thank you so much for your work, Christina. And I'll just do a quick introduction. I'm Marisol Quevedo-Rerucha. I am the mother of Camerina, Emilia, and Sofia, and I'm the grandmother of Isabela, Luna, and Cynthia Iliana. So this work is really important to me and to my family. And it is with a lot of honor. I'm also the Chief of Partnerships and Strategy with the National Parents Union. But it is with a lot of honor to be here to introduce this wonderful time. And We Got You is really the brainchild of Tim Daly, who is the CEO of Navigator, and Carrie Rodriguez. And they passed the mantle on to Whitney Henderson, who's going to talk about Navigator and the amazing work that's happening. So this time is for you parents. You're going to be receiving amazing resources. We also have translation available in Spanish. And if you have live questions, go ahead and post them on Facebook Live so that we can get answers to you. So I will be here in the background, but thank you so much. And Whitney, welcome. Thank you for your work. Thank you for everything that you do with Navigator and for this very special time.
Thank you so much too. I just have to say the way that you introduced this partnership, this collaboration is just so awesome, because you started with the framing of families, we are there for you. And no matter what type of family you are, we really care about inclusion, and we want to make sure that anybody who's viewing this can see themselves as deserving of the resources, deserving of the care, and deserving of, the answers that you so truly deserve. So thank you so much for setting us up in that way. We truly value this partnership. This partnership is not new to us, it's true to us. We really love National Parent Union. love Carrie so much. Marisol, working with you in the past few weeks and Colleen has been amazing. And so when this started, I'm going to give you guys just a quick glimpse of who we are as an organization and talk about how and why this partnership started, as Marisol has already mentioned. And I also want to make sure that we have the opportunity to introduce ourselves before we start with questions too. So our work at Navigator is all about making sure that families can find a path forward as it relates to their education, as it relates to how their kids are succeeding and achieving. And the way in which we do that is we pair our navigators with employers. And so employers that we work with currently all across the country, we have Tulane University, we have MIT, we have International House Hotel down in New Orleans, so many different employer partners who have said it matters to us that our employees truly, truly, truly can focus not only on their work and maintaining and sustaining themselves, but focus on their children's education and the path that they want for them as well too. And so they provide this service for free as a benefit for their employees. And that means our navigators get to connect with employees at their place of employment before their breaks, during their lunch break, after break. And they also have 24-hour access to us via our app. And they can ask any question that they want related to education, their trajectory, whether or not their kid qualifies for certain financial aid, if they're, getting ready to attend college, whether or not their kid is reading on the right level, if they're, 7 years old. And it runs the gamut in terms of the types of support that we give. And so that's a short snippet of who we are as an organization and as a nonprofit. I am Whitney Henderson, Chief Program Officer, and I am based in New Orleans. And before I go any further, I also want to introduce our other team members, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves too.
Hi, I'm Elisa Severinghouse. I'm based in Boston. I'm our executive director of our site here. And in the greater Boston area, we serve about 300 families across a number of different industries and who span about 20 different school districts.
Thanks, Elisa.
Awesome. My name is Victoria Paulino. I am a navigator here in Boston. So I have the privilege of working with our wonderful families and supporting them and their kiddos on their educational goals. I come from a classroom background, so definitely use a lot of that expertise to support my families.
Awesome. Thank you. And then we got some comments. Thank you so much. Someone is a huge fan. Thank you. We really appreciate it. So the way that this is going to work is I first want to start us out with just a global view of what is happening with pandemic learning right now. When Marisol and Colleen and I were talking and Tim were talking, one of the things that we wanted to make sure is just that we had a really root understanding of where we've come from, what we're currently experiencing, and what the future outlook looks like. I will be incredibly brief though, because we wanted time to be specific. So the way that this is going to work is oh, there we go. We wanted this time to specifically be for you and your questions. And I see that we're already at 13 past the hour, 14 past the hour. So I will be very, very short. So the first thing that we're thinking about, and this could, again, inspire some of the questions that you guys have for us is, what's really next for school reopening in 2021? And I will say, internally, we've talked about this a lot. It really depends on where your kids are in the country. It really depends on the type of school that they attend. We have been seeing that mostly schools are staying in person in spite of the recent shifts that we've seen in COVID-19, mainly if they're in a suburban area, mainly if they're in a private school or have been in a private school type setting. Many of the kids across the country are still staying or choosing in-person schooling for a lot of different reasons. We know that there's a lot of inequity as it relates to what schools are offering, what schools can offer. And so we've been seeing, for the most part, a lot of different shifting in perspectives on if cases continue to rise into 2021. Are we looking at the end of the school year being completely virtual through that time? Or is there a point in which we'll actually return to 100% in person? And that hasn't been many school districts who are offering those options. And so we're keeping our ears very, very low to just understand what districts are using as metrics to determine whether or not they're offer these to families. But I know that many of you are joining specifically because you have opted for virtual learning 100% of the time for your children. And so we want to make sure that that even if that is your choice, that schools are still in constant and regular communication with you so that you're savvy and privy to the policies, the shifts, the rules, the norms that are currently being established. So that's point one. The second of 3 points would be, what is the real long-term impact of this pandemic, of this virus? And what we've been seeing so far is just that kids are really not doing well, or have not been doing well, if they are, excuse me, participating in some type of assessment that determines their reading level, that determines their proficiency in math, science, and other things. One of those assessments that we've recently partner with, or I shouldn't say partner, but just have a lot of access to, would be the STAR and MAP assessments that many school districts lead across the country. What we've seen from some of the recent STAR reports is that only 24% of this year's fifth graders are projected to meet proficiency thresholds in reading. And if you gasp at this moment, it probably is right. Like, that is not only concerning, that's more than half of what it usually is annually. So annually, we're somewhere in the 54th percentile when it comes to children being proficient in ELA and math, but just 24 or 21% is a huge dip. It's concerning, one, because again, going back to the nod to inequity, we know that many of our families still don't have regular and constant resources. Like one of the things that we see often is kids sharing devices amongst households for their distance learning. And if you have a third grader, a seventh grader, a first grader, there's no way that all of the kids can get essentially what they need. Some of the classes are asynchronous, some of them are synchronous, and there's just so many things are coming up. Some have unstable Wi-Fi, and so we've had some cases where teachers are asking kids to download certain materials. It's taking a lot of data, it's slowing, there's a lot of drag in the connectivity for the Wi-Fi, and there's a lot of things that families are just truly trying to work out. And so we've been really thoughtful about what this means long-term for our kids and what extended opportunities they should be afforded to close these gaps, and how people should be thinking about how these gaps should be closed instead of widen in the next few months, if not the next few years. And so that is a huge concern for us, and we're really keeping our ears low to make sure that families and policymakers are being thoughtful about not just one type of families or parents' experience, but all. And then the last thing is really making sure that our children are okay. So we like to think of kids holistically. We know that kids aren't just metrics and data points. Like, aside from the assessments, aside from, achievement, are they able to articulate and process the way that this pandemic has made them feel? A lot of our kids have not had, play dates with Marisol. She introduced herself as, I am the mother of and the grandmother of, which I love. And so many kids have not been afforded the opportunity to have in-person contact with their grandparents this year. And what does that mean for children who truly love their grandparents? What are some things that we can do to make sure that they're continuing social opportunities long-term, so that they are healthy mentally, so that they feel affirmed, so that they believe that, the people who truly love and care about them are still a part of their lives, even though they can't be with them face to face. And so in our team, we've talked a lot about what socialization can look like. And some of the tips that we've shared are really quickly just going old school. And I even hate to say that, because it's like, what is old school these days? It seems like even March is old school for me. I can't remember much about the beginning of this year, but unplugging when necessary from technology, doing puzzles together. If that means that, grandma and grandpa are 700 miles away, setting up time for Zoom conversations where they could, you can read a poem to them, or you can bake cookies together virtually. There's so many things that, are ideas that we can do to make sure that we're nurturing our children during these tough times. But more than ever, we want to make sure that, again, that they are mentally stable and that they feel loved and cared for. So those are the big 3 buckets of things that we have been talking about and thinking about internally. And as you prepare your questions for us, we just, again, you can use many of these ideas as things that you may have further or extension questions about, but there's not anything that we, you can't ask us. And so we want to open the floor right now for your questions in particular, and they can be related to anything from early childhood education to college access to you name it. So I'm going to pause there, and we're going to start with the questions. And Colleen, if there are any from Facebook Live, will you let us know?
Hi, so I'm actually seeing some questions on Facebook Live, so I'll pop in here. And we have two parents. So there's two parents who are from preschoolers. And the question, hold on one second. I feel like I lost it. Here we go. So preschool questions. Actually, let me go to this one. So question from a high school parent, full-time virtual learning. My son is struggling with the lack of social interaction. He's also very cautious about COVID. How can I help him to safely socialize?
That's a great question, and a segue from our previous conversation. One of the things that we've seen from many of our own families is just that our high school kids, because they are at the age where socialization is so important to them, it's like the one of the primary things that they think about. We've seen a lot of them struggle during this time because, you know, their friends seem distant. Everything is mostly virtual right now, and I think that for them, the virtual aspect of where we are as a country is actually an asset. And so we've seen a lot of kids who have not only put together virtual study groups, that's more academic based, but in terms of the socialization, clubs, many schools have just like omitted their clubs for this year, which is super unfortunate. And so I've seen cases where kids have actually generated their own. They've thought about, you know, here are 5, 4, 6 buddies that we have that are very interested in gaming, that are very interested in coding, that are very interested in science fiction, and they put together, you know, book clubs and all of these things. And so in terms of ideas on how to start, I think through what are their interests. Those are things that we definitely want to nurture during this time. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? If you say high school, the assumption is that, you know, they will be adults in a few more years. And so when you think about how you will contribute to our society, what are your passions, interests, funds of knowledge? And once he determines those, it may be a case where the school didn't even offer this in the first place. So what a great leadership opportunity for him or her to say, hey, we want to start this. And I can start by inviting either friends who attended school with me or even my own family, my cousins, and so on and so forth. So I definitely would encourage them to first think through what are your interests? What is something that you're interested in leading? Or even if you're not interested in leading them, what can you join? Many community groups and centers right now, including the library, which is a great place to be a first start, have put together a list of opportunities and options that are typically free in children's communities to say, here's a group that is focused on literacy. Here's a group that is focused on, you know, puzzles. I had no idea that online puzzles was a thing. Like literally you click your mouse and you move the piece and it's like a competition based thing. I'd never seen that before, but this time has taught us so much about what exists that we did not know. So that's a really cool opportunity. It builds your cognition and all of these things. But we've seen a lot of that sprout up. And I'd say outside of understanding what your interests are, think through what's being offered locally so that you can also not only flex your leadership opportunities and skills, but you can also meet new people who are, you know, when the pandemic is over, they're likely right down the street from you. Would you guys add anything to that, Victoria, Lisa?
Yeah, I think part of what I think about is what are activities that they are interested in individually that can be shared in some kind of virtual way, that you might not have thought of it previously, or it might not have been something that you might do in a group before, but can you cultivate that? So I'm thinking of one student whose mom I've been in touch with, who, you know, is very interested in photography, and that's a very independent activity, but then she has, you know, helped him find places where he can both share his work, share like talking about learning about different things about photography, and that provides a kind of connection over a common interest that has been really helpful to him in the past several months.
I just have to say that I love those ideas that you shared, especially like accessing your community resources. I love that. The libraries, those are phenomenal ideas, and they're free, which I think is also important. So this is a really important question. Will the Navigator assistance also be given to students and parents in Spanish? And also, will there be SPED assistance available via Navigator?
Great questions. Keep them rolling. So definitely available in Spanish. I feel like nearly half of our staff is proficient in Spanish, including Victoria and Elisa, who are on the call right now. And so definitely we want to make sure, to your point to start, that all of our families have the access that they need, in no matter what language is their preferred or first language. So that's the first thing. In terms of special education, absolutely, we have that expertise in-house. I also was a former special education teacher, inclusion teacher. I also know that Elisa also has experience with special education too, and with Victoria being a former teacher, definitely inclusion as well too. And so one of the things that I want people to be mindful of about special education is we have heard consistently that schools are not keeping track of what steps come next in the formalized IEP process. And so many students are due right now for either evaluations themselves, or it is time to come to the table to discuss how much progress they're making towards their annual goals and outcomes. And when we talk to some of our families, schools have not reached out to set this up. We do understand that much of that is because schools have very limited capacity. We've seen that schools have slashed budgets in quite a few ways, but in one of the ways that has been most prevalent is that they're sharing a lot of special education resources, teachers included, among several different schools. And so that includes psychologists, that includes the people who come in and do the actual assessment, and so on and so forth. And so we do not want families to believe, because special education and access to it, there's laws that go along with that, and an IEP is a legally binding contract and a document. And so we have to make sure that our kids are getting the resources that they are supposed to and deserving of, and that schools are doing all that they can to make sure that they are.
One thing I might add, especially for students who receive special education supports, especially during this time, is because students' individualized education plans, or IEPs for special education, are written as if they are supposed to be like in-person schooling. So they're written for a time before COVID, right? So a lot of these plans are not taking into consideration like the current pandemic that we're living in. So a lot of the support we've been providing with families at this time is thinking about like, what are the supports that you legally are your child is meant to get during this time? Does your child qualify for in-person supports? In-person supports, how much? And especially during this time, this is actually something that's been coming up the last couple of weeks for my families, is like, if a school closes, if your child's receiving in-person special education supports and your school closes because there's a COVID outbreak, what is the school policy, right? Is the school just closing and just like not giving you a date on when it's going to open again? Like, what are the questions to ask, right? And how can you kind of push the school to really think about, like, we need to come up with policies that will be sustainable long term, right? Because this is our reality, right, that we're living in now. So you can't just keep closing the school for 3 weeks, like opening up again and then like closing 3 days later, right? So that's another big piece of like supporting families whose students are on IEP that's been really important during this time.
Yeah, and I would just add on to that, that one of the pieces I have discussed most with families has been, what is a reasonable approximation of the IEP that is written for in-person services? Because even IEPs that are being written right now, it may vary slightly from state to state, but probably not substantially. The Massachusetts guidance is that an IEP should still be written for if we were in person, and that we're not writing an IEP according to what's happening right now, which then leaves a parent in a difficult place of, so what's reasonable to push for in this context? I know that schools are strained. I know that the district is strained in different ways. And at the same time, my child is to a certain, is entitled to a certain level of support. So I've worked with a number of different families to think about what that reasonable approximation is, and then to push for something that's in accordance with that, to ensure that their child is still being supported effectively, even with the constraints that we're facing. And I also wanted to add que sí hablamos español y podemos ayudar a todos y proporcionar el apoyo que ofrecemos. Et aussi, nous parlons français et ça me coûte un peu parler français et espagnol dans la même minute, mais nous pouvons le faire et je peux entendre la majorité du créole haïtien.
That was absolutely beautiful, and hashtag goals. So if anybody, so the questions that are coming in right now are in English, and I'm not seeing any other questions in coming in Spanish on the chat here. But if there are questions, si hay preguntas en español, la respuesta va a ser en español. So if there are any questions in Spanish or French also, then we can have those answered. So let me go back. Okay, so here's another question, and I think this back to preschool. How do we keep a 3-year-old focused on their schoolwork? And the other thing that I want to add, so in the preschool world is also, you know, for parents who are working and not able to sit with their child, and it's a virtual online preschool, how can what ideas or suggestions do you have for keeping your kids engaged at those little ages, that 3, 4, early 5-year-old?
Yes, great question. So the one thing to be thoughtful of with our kids who are ECE age is to understand the stability in a routine is going to be really clutch and really key during this time. And what I mean by that is that for kids who are in preschool, when you think about their school day, and it's been so long since any of us have attended preschool or probably even visited one, but they have really intentional blocks in their day that are meant to build up to a specific outcome. So with children, we know that they start the day really, really high energy. And that's why when you go to preschools, you see them starting out with song and dance early in the morning. It's a lot of singing, it's a lot of dancing. And then you see it kind of like, it kind of like goes up like this, and then it plateaus, and then it goes down from there, starting with like the nap, and then, you know, there's a snack first, and then the nap, and then after that, there's more activities, and then that's the end of their day. The more closely you can align their day with what their actual day may look like in a physical classroom, the better. And what that typically means is you have to create a schedule for them. It works best when kids know what to expect each and every single moment of the day. There are some days where you may have to be super flexible, but that's totally okay. As long as kids know that, okay, I know that I usually start my day this way. I know in the middle of my day, this typically happens. I know that mom or dad or my guardian or grandma or whoever it may be is usually busy during this time. So I know this is not time where I interrupt him or her, etc. And so the schedule is going to be uniquely important to making sure that not only do they understand it, and we've seen families post it, we've also seen examples of families who have walked through it with them and gave them a really specific why. Here's the reason why we're going through your day with these particular blocks, which is super important to not only verbalize and explain to kids, but we're really building up their knowledge and understanding and empathy for other people. So we do recognize that it is unique for them to be in a situation where they're experiencing pre-K almost on their own, but the rationale is really important too. So first thing first would be to create that schedule for your child and to keep to it as closely as possible so that, you know, after 2 weeks or, you know, hopefully by 2 weeks, they'll have the reps and the routine to know what to expect. The second thing is to be thoughtful about the types of breaks that are necessary. And this is the thing that where I think schools lag and fall a little bit behind on, is that there's almost like a one size fits all approach. Like all kids need to go to the bathroom at this time. All kids are going to be, you know, spiked in interest at this time. And that's not necessarily true. And so I do think that this setting where families are with their children is so beneficial. So knowing your kid is really important. If you know that they do tend to be high energy in the morning, then you situate your blocks where there may be some YouTube singing, some YouTube dancing for 10 to 15 minutes. But do know that I think on average, kids at the 3 to 5 age, they need breaks almost every 10 minutes. Like they need a when I say break, they need a transition, like something needs to change because their attention spans aren't fully developed to be able to sustain long periods of sitting still or engaging in a certain thing. So knowing what type of breaks you schedule is going to be important. Other things to consider, so in terms of transitions, in terms of breaks, you have the sing and dance, which I've referenced. Physical activity, which we've seen, yoga. There's a yoga channel on YouTube that the kids, I think it's Cosmic Yoga. Cosmic Yoga is the bomb. Kids love that. The facilitator is so engaging. She has her outfits and costumes every single day. I've seen kids do that more than 10 minutes also, by the way. So that definitely is something that would be interesting to them. But think about the physical activity. P.E. Joe is another like YouTube guy who gets the kids active and physical. But obviously there's going to be what the school recommends too. So the school is going to say, they should be practicing 5 minutes or 10 minutes of handwriting. And, the teacher may be on the screen. If it's asynchronous, they're on the screen with them and they're following through. With whatever their class or course may be at that time, whether it's counting numbers or learning their ABCs. And so those are blocks that can't be moved. But be thoughtful about what happens, again, in those transition times and those transition periods, including what they eat, like what their snack breaks are. Maybe there's some things that are accessible and within reach from the computer where they can have a few goldfish, where they can have, something to drink. And the reason I say that is because the less your kid has to depend on you to get something or find something, or to answer something, the better. And it really depends on their workstation, their workspace, how easy it is to access, the pencil that they'll need, the eraser that they'll need, the scratch paper that they'll need to, practice and count their numbers. And so again, in a nutshell, the schedule is really important to plan out with your child, and the rationale and the reason why you're doing preschool this way at home. Thinking about your breaks and your transitions, how long they are, what you're doing during those times. And then finally, making sure that you're having conversations with your kid, and you can determine when that works for you. You can say, mommy, daddy, grandma, grandpa, we're going to talk with you after 10 or 15 minutes. A timer is really helpful with that, because we know kids will stop something, they won't attempt it anymore because they need your affirmation. They need to know that they're doing something right. So using the timer to say, okay, we're going to set it, and this is how long you have to focus on your work, etc. And when this time is up, I'm going to check in with you to see that everything is okay, you have what you need, and so on.
I was waiting a second to see if anybody else had anything to jump in. That was so full of resources. Oh my goodness. I was sitting here, I didn't capture everything, but that idea, what I love the way that you started was like, kids need a schedule, but you also need to be flexible. And Whitney, you also talked about, like almost like be forgiving of yourself. Like we're all doing the best that we can. Absolutely. And so thank you for those Cosmic Yoga resource, the P.E. Joe resource. And I love the idea of a timer. That is how I live my life, is by setting that timer. So integrating that into the school day is phenomenal. There was another great tip that Alexis Knox Miller, who is in Colorado, she actually uses the Alexis Dot. It can be scheduled to keep kids going in the school day. It was absolutely beautiful. Wow. So the Google Dot, you can connect it to your phone and then set the timer and then say what you want it to say. So it could say, let's say your kid's name is Paulina. So Paulina, it is now time to go into your English class. Boom, or like, it's really beautiful. So that's another really great strategy. So there's a couple of questions I'm watching. I'm gonna put those at the end, but I wanna get to some of the content questions. Okay. So this one, my nephew is autistic. He struggles to get back into the routine after a break. What recommendations do you have? And I didn't catch the age, but it doesn't really matter. So I think if you could think about maybe just, like early elementary, middle school, high school, how to get autistic students back in after a break. And that's kind of a broad, because there's so many, like there's such a big range of autism, but any helpful hints that you have?
Yeah, and Elisa, Victoria, feel free to jump in, because I know one of the things that's really unique to us is we have so many different experiences in terms of families and children, and our navigation team is really privy to specifically, dear to my heart, children who do have learning challenges or difficulties for a lot of different, over the course of a lot of our different caseloads. And so for getting back to the routine, I would probably say, and sorry, I want to correct my language, learning exceptionalities. One of the things that I would say is that I'm almost thinking that the timer could also be handy and helpful for that as well too. But what's really probably more helpful for this particular situation is, what is the activity itself? Kids usually like to be able to choose and determine what comes next. And in many cases, we know that that's not possible and that's not the case. And which is why we often tell our families, like, be diligent at the start of the day to show kids what their time is going to look like. So here's the time where you're going to do math. Here's the time where you do this, and then weaving in those like incentive periods where it's like what they want. So, you know, I want to take a 5-minute break and go outside for a walk, or, you know, I want to take the dog out or take the cat out. Cats don't go out, sorry. But you can let the cat out. I don't know. They come back most of the time. But being thoughtful about how you integrate what the kids want, and then also like those non-movable pieces of their day could be really helpful. I won't say that I'm necessarily flaking on this question, but because this came up recently internally, and I'm trying to think of how we responded to this. So Elisa, Victoria, would you add anything there?
Yeah. So I was just going to jump in with 2 specific suggestions. One is previewing, and the other is some form of incentive, which I think Whitney was starting to allude to. Previewing before you go on break, what it's going to look like to return from the break. So what in a lot of this is about setting expectations, right? So the kid has a solid expectation and of what is coming next, and of what it looks like for them to be successful at returning from the break. So if they are, you know, going outside to run around for 10 minutes, you know, I would think about, you know, you come inside, you take your jacket off, like down to that level of granularity, certainly for younger kids, and then depending on the level of support need, I support families with students all across the spectrum, and so I know how much that can vary. And then, you know, making sure you have a calm body, and you know, sitting down in your chair, opening your computer, and maybe that's a visual checklist, because then a student is able to see, I have done all of the things that were expected of me, and I am successfully transitioning back from this break. And maybe that earns them a point towards something. I think with something like mastering that transition, you might not want to have, like, again, depending on the level of need, an immediate incentive that comes, but it might be able to build towards something else, because you probably have a lot of transitions during the day. So I would think about it, even if I were in a school setting, working with a student who struggled with transitions, it's like, if we have 6 during the day, if you know, master based on the criteria we agree to, if you master 5 out of 6, then, you know, we get to do X, and that's like whatever the preferred activity is. Maybe you start with 3 out of 6. It definitely depends on what the kid needs.
Thank you. It was the visual cue that I couldn't remember, but yeah, that's an awesome tip.
I think the only piece I would add is, like, when it's getting close to the time the child's supposed to transition. I have a 5-year-old who I'm currently working with, who has autism, and a big piece that helps him is say, like, okay, like, we're going to be transitioning from our snack. After, you know, in 2 minutes, we're going to be going to our next activity. If you don't finish your snack in 2 minutes, then you won't have time to eat it later, kind of things like that. And also kind of verbally saying, like, what should be happening as that transition is coming up, so that kids have a little bit more guidance as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had some questions that had to do with Ed Navigator and Ed Navigator type services. And I think, so some of the questions, I think might just need like a little bit more explanation as to like where Ed Navigator serves. But there is definitely a call for, like, how do we get, how can I get this information to the parents at my school? How can I connect them to Ed Navigator? One of the things that I do want to share is that this is why we are doing this, because at Navigator, we want to be able to get parents access to their services. So we're trying this out, the WeGotchU, we're trying it out to see how our morning response is, and we're gonna have another show on Thursday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern time. So one recommendation that I have, initially share this information with your parents, print out the beautiful graphic that we have for WeGotchU so that they can register. If, if you're working with them virtually, or if you happen to be in person in school, register them, get their information and register them right then. But there was definitely, so one of the requests was, can we get like a one-page thing that we can pass out that has Ed Navigator information, and how do we connect to Ed Navigator? And then also, like, how can we access Ed Navigator services? So I'll leave those two out there in the world for you.
All right. Well, the one pager, the best one pager would be our website. It's very clear, it's crisp, all of the information that you need about who we are, what we care about, which is busy, hardworking families, no matter where you are in the world. We really care that, you feel supported. We really care that you have a person who is like rooting for you, advocating for you. So often, parents and guardians don't have that. Like, you just have to fend for yourself. You're out there, you're attending parent conferences alone. Sometimes you don't know how to prepare for them. Going back to the special education situation, many times you're just told, here, sign this. Your IEP is like 24 pages long, and you're required to do a signature on every page, and no one is walking with you to say, what does this even mean? What is an annual goal? What is the reinstatement period? What type of, who tested my child? What does this even mean that they're in the 14th percentile? And so that's who we are, and that's why we exist. And so much of our information is on the website, but there are specifically two things that I want to point out on our website, because I want to get into the second question on how do you access us. Access to us, there's a link there that says get help, I believe, on our website. And there's basically an email address that you can send to get more information that comes directly to our marketing director, David Keeling, and me. And so we'll be able to connect really, really quickly in terms of what your questions may be. But more recently, our response in this pandemic has been really quick, because we wanted to make sure that we were putting out really relative things in front of families' faces to, one, help alleviate a lot of the stress that people are experiencing right now, but then also help them build confidence in, like, we got you, and we also have ourselves too. And so two things really quickly that I'll point out that we started this year. Aside from Camp Kinda, we put together a virtual summer camp for students. We had about over 50,000 participants, which is wild to us. It was a way in which we increased our access, our national and global access to more and more families. Camp Kinda was put together over the course of, I think, 8 weeks. And basically it was family adventures that any kid could participate in. If you were 5 years old, if you were 17 years old, you can literally go through these thematic units and be able to learn about everything from making a film to mythology and all of these mythical creatures and all of the things that they're known for. So it's really, really cool. Our response to that is something that you will see on the website right now, which is called the Kinda Guide. The Kinda Guide is our response to, now that Camp Kinda is over and our kids got to participate in a summer virtual camp, our families got a chance to breathe and not to think about, oh my God, my camp was canceled this summer, my kid is going to be at home, what are they going to do? Now the actual school year has started, and family still has some of those same sentiments. And so we put together the Kinda Guide specifically for parents to say, can I have a one-pager? I like whoever used that phrase, thank you. Can I have a one-pager that shows me specifically and tells me everything that I should be privy to be able to feel confident in tackling this next week? Our Kinda Guide, again, formulated for families. They come out, if you register, again, on our website, or you can go to thekindaguide.org, you'll see the resources there for you. Those resources essentially are recipes every single day. that you can do with your family, you can do with your children. You do not have to think about what's for dinner because it's already there for you. There's also dinner time questions where, you know, while you're preparing and you're doing the proportions, because look, there's learning everywhere, right? Kids are learning how to proportion, they're learning how to measure the recipes and all of these things that are coming up in the conversation. You're also learning about their day. What did you learn during school? And when there's quiet times or moments of silence, you can always go back to the kind of guide to say, you know, here's a quick quirky question that I can answer or ask my kid today. So questions for dinner, dinner time options. We also have parent hacks, because the timer was definitely one of our parent hacks. We put together those hacks because we know that shortcuts and cheats are good for parents when they are, you know, appropriate. And in this case, any shortcut and cheat to make sure that, you know, we're keep maintaining our sanity is necessary. So you'll see a lot of the tricks of the trade that come from the classroom and teachers, where that has made our lives better when we were in the classroom, and we're sharing those with our families. And then really specifically, we have a featured article every single week that is related to, again, the scope, the outlook. Like, how long are we in this for? What do we need to know about vaccinations? What do we need to know about, you know, the new potential Secretary of Education who may come on board? Like, what are their views? And so we think about all of those, and we know that you have so many resources that you can go to, but we minimize that to a one basic pager and one click, so that you have all of that at your fingertips. And last thing that I'll mention is we do a weekly family adventure every single week too, which is why I brought up Camp Kinda. We have remixed a lot of our past adventures and created a lot of new adventures. The one for this week is specifically about Toy Stories, since we know kids are putting together their Christmas list. They have a lot of toys that they're really interested in. Kids this week can learn about the history of toys. Like, what was the first toy? Believe it or not, Mr. Potato Head like really changed the game. I did not know that until I did the family adventure this week, and I was like, wow, this was like a really innovative toy. So we talk about Legos, we talk about, you know, what toys may look like in 2030. It's just so much learning that kids literally can take an hour of their day to go through these adventures. And again, it gives you relief, because you're like, okay, my kid is glued to the screen. They're learning, it's engaging. They take away so much from it. And so that is how you can connect with us. We may also drop this in the link too in the chat, so that you guys know what our website is for a Navigator as a whole, but then also how you can access the Kinda Guide, which really gets at some of the questions that you guys have asked.
The only other, my favorite feature of the Kinda Guide, I'm just gonna like plug this, is called Ask a Navigator, which is kind of what we're doing right here. So the questions that we write responses to questions that families like you ask us on the website, and you can go on the Kinda Guide and actually submit a question, and we will come together as a team to answer those. And those questions are really like what we are getting asked all the time by our families, and it is an amazing resource. So that's another really great piece, is like, if you still have a question after looking at the Kinda Guide, just submit one, and we'll get back to you and answer that.
That was the best part. Thank you, Victoria.
Okay, we're just looking to see if we have any additional questions, and I am not seeing any, but what I do think is really important is that we had, I think, we had 15 people at the webinar, and also we've had off and on between 3 to 6 people that are following on Facebook. So I think the information is really critical that's getting out there, and I want to thank you. So we still have about 6 more minutes. So I don't know if there are any other resources or supports that Ed Navigator wanted to make sure that we provide during this time.
I don't think so. I think that, again, going back to how we partnered and how we started, this has just been super clutch and super amazing. And again, for us to be able to, you know, all come to the table to say, this is an hour times 2, because we'll do the night one, like you said, to really put out there what is pressing families right now? Like, what's keeping you up at night? What are you most thoughtful about? What are you most worried about? And again, I know on our website, you'll see something that says, you know, educational experts, but, you know, everybody can be an expert. I feel like there's so much data and information out there right now that I feel so savvy in everything, because the computer and the screens are in my face every single day. And so I want parents to feel that way too. I want guardians to feel that way too, and caregivers. And so definitely do believe in your ability to get your questions answered, because you deserve it. And we realize that this is a really unique and tough time for us right now. And so don't be shy about it. There's so many people, you know, just like you, who may feel that, you know, no one knows this, and we don't. There's so many things that we don't know. But I can guarantee you that, you know, everyone on this call right now, from National Parents Union and Ed Navigator, will definitely put heads together to make sure that we figure it out with you. And so again, really grateful for this call. And I don't think that there's any other things that we promote other than, you know, the Kind of Guide, which I hope that people register for. And then again, to learn more about our organization and our work, and where we're housed, you can go to ednavigator.com.
So as a reminder, this will be happening again on Thursday night. So make sure that you register. And also, if you're interested in the Winter Advocacy Family Bootcamp, registration is live now. And that will be December 21st, 28th, and January 4th. So again, being a member of the National Parents Union is totally free. We are here to provide this type of support. What you need, we got you. And so we're going to continue to reach out to partners like Ed Navigator and form these partnerships and alliances to provide the best for you. So Victoria and Elisa, before we go, I don't know if you want to say anything. I'll go ahead and I'll turn it over to you before we say goodbye.
Sure. Thanks so much for having us today and for providing this venue for us to reach and support even more parents. And we are certainly here, certainly through the Ask a Navigator feature that Victoria mentioned. We would love to support folks who've listened in today or who watch this at a later time. There are so many questions that feel unanswered right now, and just you know, ambiguities and uncertainties. And from our experience working with so many different families, both in Boston and New Orleans and across the country, we are able to provide some guidance that can be really helpful to you.
Yeah. I just want to echo, thank you so much for this time. And again, that, you know, when we're just people just like you, right? You know, like you talk to an actual human when you message us on the Kind of Guide, and we're happy to take your questions. The website also is available in Spanish, so all of these resources are translated in Spanish. So para las familias que hablan español, todo lo que tenemos en nuestra página de internet lo ofrecemos en español también.
Thank you so much. And I'm really looking forward to Thursday night. So when you register, if you have any questions, please make sure that you get the questions on there, and we will see you on Thursday night. Thank you, Whitney. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Elisa. A reminder, the Kind of Guide is free, and the Winter Bootcamp is free for you and your family. We are here for you. Again, we got you, and we will have you again on Thursday night. So muchísimas gracias por estar con nosotros. Please know that you are thought of, you are loved, and you are cared for always, which is why we do the work that we do. Goodbye, everybody.
All right, thank you, and PU.